glimpse at a wave at the foreground. Then a second wave, a bit higher and gaining impetus. And finally a big one, rising high and dominating the picture. 3 small boats. And at the background, a mountain and a threatening grey sky. I'm sure many of you already saw that picture. It's a Japanese print from the 19th century called The Wave. And in this video we're going to analyze it and talk about Japanese woodblock prints, the floating world they represent, how they were made, how significant they are in the history of art, including outside Japan. So I hope you're ready to have a glance at this colorful, delicate, and ephemeral world. The Wave comes from a series of prints called 36 Views of Mount Fuji that was first published in Japan in the 1830s, almost 2 centuries ago. Woodblock prints became very popular in Japan in the 18th and 19th centuries. They were so popular and common that sometimes they were used to wrap fragile items that were exported, very much like nowadays we would use old newspapers. This is how the first prints reached Europe and America, and were discovered by Western artists. From the 17th to the 19th century, Japan enjoyed a period of stability called the Edo period. Edo is the ancient name for the city of Tokyo. This period was a military dictatorship, but it put an end to the civil war. Thanks to peace, the economy improved, and a new wealthier social class appeared, merchants in particular. And with this class, a world of culture, theater, the famous kabuki, the traditional Japanese theater, and entertainment began to flourish. The prints were one aspect of this cultural bloom, and one that became very popular with the entire Japanese population in every social class. They could represent many different things. Views from the floating world, what the Japanese call the ukiyo, were very popular. They represented the world of pleasures, entertainment, the famous geishas. But there were many other topics: landscapes, nature, ancient tales, scenes from the kabuki, scenes from everyday life, be it from the countryside or in cities, a lot of erotica too, and people could collect the pictures, but their popularity came from the fact that they played the role of people magazines today. They kept people informed about the cultural scene, or they gave them an opportunity to see famous people represented in pictures. Japan was a very closed country back then. Very few Japanese people could travel abroad, and even less foreigners were allowed to enter. But the country was not entirely closed, and to some extent there was a Western influence on the art of print. For example, a few Japanese artists used a Western perspective to suggest depth in their pictures. In the 19th century, Japan also started to import foreign pigments for the color applied to prints. The monopoly of trade with Japan had been granted to the Dutch. They were the only traders allowed to trade with Japanese traders. And they started to bring a new pigment, the first first synthetic pigment called Prussian blue, which immediately became very popular with print artists. In the Wave and the entire series called 36 Views from Mount Fuji, there is this blue, Prussian blue, in every picture. The production of prints involved several families of craftsmen. First there was the artist, which drawed on a very thin, almost transparent sheet of paper, and he passed his drawing to an engraver. The engraver stuck the paper on a woodblock and started to engrave it following the lines of the drawer. When the woodblock was ready, it looked like this. This is not a Japanese woodblock. It comes from Mongolia, actually, and it was used to print fabric. But it gives an idea of what the woodblock looked like. And it was passed to the printer, who coated it with pigment, one color at a time, and pressed the sheet of paper on the woodblock to print it progressively. It was necessary to engrave one block for each color. If we take the example of the Wave, the first color to be applied was Prussian blue, followed by yellow for the small boats and the sky, and grey. Then there was a lighter blue and a darker blue, and finally the print was ready. The creator of the Wave is known as Hokusai. This was an artist name. His real name was Nakajima Tetsujiro, and he changed name various times during his career. But when he created the Wave, he was already 70 years old and very famous and established as a print creator. The first remarkable thing about the picture is the way it is constructed. The entire scene is full of curves. The curves of the waves, the curves of the boats, and the slopes of Mount Fuji at the background that we may initially take for yet another wave. Actually, Mount Fuji is a volcano. It's like a wave of earth instead of water, and this may suggest that the elements are responding to each other. But the star of the picture is obviously this large, high wave, which is following like a spiral, and the center of this spiral is the very center of the picture. We may not initially notice the boats that seem to be lost among these masses of water, but when we see them, we understand that their situation is fairly critical. The large wave is about to fall back and maybe destroy one of the boats. Nature is certainly not gentle or reassuring in this picture, and the sense of threat the wave represents has been increased or dramatized by the way the foam is represented. The foam on top of the wave, which I find very aesthetical. I think this is the very reason why this picture is so appreciated. Looks like hands or claws that are trying to hang the boat to destroy it. fascinating thing with the picture is how the artist has been capturing a pivotal moment and been able to create a sense of suspense. In 1 or 2 seconds, the wave is going to fall down and may or may not destroy the boat. Actually, we don't know for several reasons. As the curves of the boats are following the waves, in a sense we don't exactly know if they are completely lost or if they are surfing the wave and able to go through it. We don't know neither what role Mount Fuji at the background is playing in the scene. The snow on top of the mountain looks like the foam on top of the waves. But is Mount Fuji part of the scene or protecting the sailors and making sure nothing bad happens to them? That may be a possible meaning of the picture, because traditionally in Japanese culture, Mount Fuji has a very positive image and supposed influence. It is worshipped by various cults. It's a place of pilgrimage, and the influence attributed to Mount Fuji is generally very positive for the Japanese population. We are left with this ambiguity. We won't know. But what gives a lot of strength to the picture is this sense of suspense, this sense of suspended time. We know the scene is going to disappear in a second, and we are faced with a capture of a very precious and critical moment. A little bit like these pictures of surfers passing inside a waterfall. The attempt to capture a critical moment and inject suspense in the picture is something typical of Hokusai's work. We also see it in other scenes, like this one or this one. But what makes the waves unique is how simply and efficiently the artist has been able to capture both the beauty and the violence of nature. The fragility of human life faced with it too, in a way that maybe only a Japanese man could capture. It's a country of earthquakes and typhoons, after all. As I said at the beginning, Japanese prints in the 19th century also became very popular with European artists, especially Impressionist painters. Claude Monet, who is sometimes considered as the father and the most prominent figure of Impressionism, had a large collection of Japanese prints. He drew a lot of inspiration from them. On the topics, I'll put a link in the description to the video I made about the water lilies. And he even had a little bridge built in his garden that you may have seen because he painted it countless times. And this bridge was directly inspired by what he had seen in the Japanese prints he collected. Another painter, probably inspired by the 36 views of Mount Fuji, is Claude Cézanne. Among other things, he is known for the dozens of pictures, dozens of paintings he made of the same mountain in the south of France. And very much like Hokusai or Monet with the water lilies, he found inspiration in a tireless repetition of the same subject. I hope you liked this quick glance at the world of Japanese prints, and I'll see you soon for another